Fannytastic Life, Season 2. Let's get in it. Good day. How are you? Amazing. So, today we're talking about the labor of love. And I don't mean having a baby. I mean labor, working, actual workforce. Let's talk about it. So first things first, I think that my whole life I've been geared away to be internally driven for my goal, for my dream, whatever it is, whatever it will be, or whatever it is intended, in whatever my stars, right? Whatever is intended, that's been part of my drive. But the funny thing was, all the jobs that I've had as a person that led me to where I am. So first things first, where did this all come from, right? My grandfather, he was an amazing artist, and he considered himself a fine painter in fine art, and he had a PhD in that. But he was, in essence, a teacher, right? He worked for the New York City Department of Education School Systems. He then became later a principal, then a professor in college. And, he really was very proud of his credentials. And when you think about it, how did he get there, right? Did he just go to school and then do his dream? No. He worked on the docks. He had an antique store. He was in the Navy. He did so many things to make sure that his dream was possible, just because he felt that, and this is what would be his main principle, that you could have a goal and a dream, but keep one foot in reality. Now, my grandmother, she always was very supportive to my grandfather, but don't be mistaken. She had her own master's degree, worked for the Brooklyn College, and, she was a force to be reckoned with. So where does that take me? Well, my mother was the same way until she fell ill. And my father, as I mentioned many times, he was a musician. His core was music, but his essence was crafts and doing handwork, because that's what he did to survive, but he also had a passion for it. He would call himself a handyman, but he was truthfully an electrician, a plumber, an exterminator. I mean, I don't know what my father couldn't do. I know he wasn't a baker and he wasn't a cook, but he did almost everything. So when I was a young girl, my mom sometimes needed to keep me places where she knew I was safe, but we didn't have like babysitting. So sometimes she would leave me with her friend who had a factory, and I would sit there and do different textile work. But I was like 9 years old. So I started seeing all these people working and doing amazing textiles, and I would just think, oh, okay, this is, a lot of people are hardworking, and this is normal. Then I had a good friend who I helped her one time. We did bead work, but I always did, and I always was working, always. And I can't think of a time I didn't have a job. So the funny thing is I remember one time I was working for a restaurant, and I was a waitress. And I gotta tell you, and listen, I'll be honest, I used to get the most tips, and whoever worked with me, you know what's up. I had an incredible job there. I love that job, being the waitress. But then we got bought over, and now I was a barista. So I had to learn a different trade of mindset, and I did. I flowed with it. But while working there used to be this store in the village called Andy's Cheapies. And I say it because it's no longer there, but I used to work there too at the same time. And I also worked at the movie theater at the same time. And at one point, I started working for a big retailer that I love so much. And I had to give up one of those jobs because my schedules were so confusing. I just had to do it. So I did away with the movie theater and Andy's Cheapies, but I kept the restaurant. As time progressed, I ended up becoming a temp. And when I became a temp, it was very interesting because I got to work everywhere and learned so many different things that I never knew, I had interest in. I worked at MTV, VH1, Spike TV, CBS, the UFT. I worked at so many different places, just temping, working. And then sometimes it was the funniest thing when I would be at the Viacom studios or Warner Brothers studios. I would see celebrities and I would act like it was nothing. Why? Because I grew up in the village. We always had celebrities. So celebrities were kind of like, well, you don't care I'm a celebrity? And I honestly didn't. I don't get starstruck. Growing up in Manhattan, you get to see so many different walks of life. You end up not even caring. I remember, I have a funny story just to kind of cut my story off. I remember one time I went to this store called Rubber Soul on Broadway in the Village. Love that store. Love that store. And all of a sudden, Kid runs in the store and his cousin's outside. Me and my mom and my sister walk by and I'm like, oh my God, that was Kid. I was like, well, let's go say hello. And my mom was like, you don't know him. So I see the cousin. I'm like, hey, what's up? Kid's in there? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, tell him Fanny said what's up. And he was like, oh yeah? How you know him? I'm like, oh, we from the same neighborhood. He was like, oh, all right, I'll let him know. He runs inside. Kid comes out. He's like, yo, what's up? How you been? Blah, blah, blah. And then we leave. And my mom was like, what do you mean from the same neighborhood? I'm like, I made that up. Who the hell cares? Honestly, it was so funny. I think I was 13 or 14 years old, maybe 15. And I had that much moxie, spunk, snark that I didn't care. I mean, in that time, I remember my sister met Fat Joe. I met Mary J. Blige, Brandy. What is that? Daddy Mac and Mac Daddy. So many different people. You chalk it up to your environment. But that actually really helped me not being starstruck. And I'll get to that later on in my story. So, where was I? There I was, right? I'm working at Viacom and Warner Brothers. And I'm meeting so many different people that I meet this big, famous rapper. And I had no idea at the time who he was. And I'm into all types of music, but I'll be honest with you. I grew up in Rob Bass, Run DMC, that time in my life where, sometimes a new rapper comes up and I don't know who they are, but I like the music. So at the time this occurred, it was early 2000 and I didn't know who the rapper was. So I'm talking to his assistant and we're having this whole conversation and she was like, oh, so-and-so. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. I see he has an appointment. Tell him to wait right there. So he came over a little flustered and he was like, yo, what's your deal? Like, I'm a celebrity. And I was like, I'm sure you are. Let me give you your credit where it's due. He was like, what's your name, Fanny? Wow, you're fantastic. And I had to laugh because that's what I've mentioned so many times. This is my Fannytastic life. And yes, I'm fantastic. So I said, no, sir, you need to be corrected. I'm fantastic. And so he was like, for sure, fantastic. So the whole time we did work with him, he would be like, that's fantastic, that's fantastic. I swear, one time I was listening to the radio and I heard him say fantastic. And like everybody thought I was crazy. But I was like, he said he's out with a cool girl named Fannytastic. I was like, that's me. Anywho. So it was a great experience. So one day in my temp assignments, I got this incredible opportunity to work at the United Federation of Teachers. The issue was in my temp assignments, before my temp assignments, I had a job that paid a lot of money. But I started getting seizures, so I wasn't sure I wanted to work with a full-time job. I just felt like, my seizures, I could never predict them. But that's why I did temp. But this job came over and they offered me full-time. So I called my grandfather and I said, listen, I have temp assignments. Excuse me, I have temp assignments that pay a lot of money. This temp assignment doesn't. He was like, Fanny, that's the UFT. I used to work with Albert Schenker, and that's an environment I need you to be in. I know people there. That's a union atmosphere for teachers' rights. And he was like, do your civil duties. What do you care about the pay? We've never been about money. And I had to laugh because he was so proud. And I'm like, but Grandpa, I'm just going to be a receptionist. He's like, do it. Take the job. It comes with a pension and benefits. And I said, okay. So I took the job. Had I known what a life-changing experience that was going to be. So I worked there and wow, I ended up wanting to go back to school, wanting to change certain things. But what I didn't do is I still kept my other jobs. So I was working at Banana Republic. I love that place during seasonal holiday. And I was working at this little shop. And then we lived in Greenpoint. So we had an apartment that I was the super of. Could you imagine? I was like my father, a super. But I was doing these things while working there because I was always feeling like, don't put all your eggs in a basket. I never know what's going to happen. Have a job. So while working at the U of T, I end up moving up the ladder to a place where it was like my dream career to work for the negotiations department. To this day, I love them all. I love every single person I ever come across that their hearts, it felt like family. That's literally what it felt like working there. And then I had this golden opportunity to work for Carmen Alvarez, special education vice president at large, New York City. Hello. She was like a celebrity. We would go somewhere and they'd be like, Carmen, you saved my life, my child's life. You helped my school. And I said, Carmen, do you not realize you're a celebrity? A civil leader and celebrity? And she would laugh and say, Fanny, I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing the services that the parents, the teachers, the kids need. And I was so in love with that notion. And everything that she needed, I was happy to do. And while working in negotiations, I got to apprentice for Lucille Swaim, historical figure. She handwrote the first contract of the United Federation of Teachers. And I got to do her research, do analytical work, help her figure out things, look at the contracts. And I remember one thing we did that was so amazing. We were looking at some of our steps and some of our language. And she was like, Fanny, you did an excellent job here. This is about to get published in our voted in contracts. And I was so flawed by that. I remember I told myself, I'm going to go to Tiffany's and buy myself a present. Why? Because Lucille didn't give anybody a compliment. And Lucille, in her office, she had a little face mask. And I'm like, why do you have a hockey face mask in here? She's like, no, Fanny, it's a face shield. Because one time they threw a contract at my face. And so because they felt so bad, they gave me this. And she wore it with like a badge of honor. And I was like, this lady, and she's like, Fanny, I know I'm wicked. And I'm like, girl, she made me cry more than once. Any assistant who ever worked for her cried. But can I tell you something? I earned those tears. And I tell you, she changed who I am inside. I was in college classes while working for her, and she was like, if you don't bring me an A, I'm going to tell them I don't want you in my department. And I'm like, okay. And I remember I was pregnant, and she was like, Fanny, I got to tell you something. Come in my office. And I said, what is it? She's like, your children are lovely. And I was like, oh, she's like, I'm telling you, I said that. I'm like, okay. She just did incredible things. And you know what? In the end, she retired and then she passed away. But I tell you, she was like my little grandma. I swear, I have my own grandma, but I love her so much. I would say, Lucille, why don't you just come with me? I'll take care of you. Just loved her. I don't even know why I loved abuse, but I just loved my job. You understand? There's a feeling that you got to kind of understand. You have a job. You wake up every morning. You go to work. But do you love what you're doing? Do you love it? Is there a love? Do you feel LOVE? Do you feel it? Or is it just, I got to go to work? If you just, I got to go to work, that's fine. Keep that job. Keep that job like I kept all my side jobs. But then what's your job that you love? Right? Find out. Figure it out. Who are you? Oh, I work for here. I'm an assistant. That's not who you are. Who are you? Well, I like to sing and tap dance. Maybe you have a talent. Oh, I like to build furniture. Maybe you're a carpenter. Who are you? Yes, this is your job. Let's put that to the side. But what is your labor of love not having children? What is your labor of love not including children? What is the workforce of love? That is what I want to know. Why? So I've always instinctively liked to be a comedian and liked law. Well, you can't do both, right? Well, yes, you can. My goal in school, I'm like, okay, I'm going to college. What am I doing? I'm studying law. That's what I did. I studied immigration law, labor law, employment, labor law. I also studied law and technology, family law, patent law, any branch. I studied it. And one of my cohorts was like, well, why don't you we need these, they're requirements, but why don't you focus on one branch? Because as a lawyer, you can only do one. I was like, you do you, and I'm going to do me. I like to be a wealth of knowledge. Let me explain. A world of knowledge is what you learn as you go. A wealth of knowledge is what you learn as you go that's considered valuable. So when I was at work, we had a lawyer that worked for us. And I got to tell you, if he's ever listening to this, I gave him a hard time. I liked him. He had a good heart. But I liked to bother him because he reminded me of my cousin, Joshua. Anywho, and if you're like, I've never heard that cousin before. Oh, it's another cousin I have. But anywho, he just was so sweet and kind and loving. But I missed that guy. So I said, let me put on this guy. Anywho, he would do things that was so hilarious. And I wouldn't forgive him for it. I would give him a hard time. Like, he would ask me something and I was like, did you say please? Did you say may I? Yeah, you're a lawyer, but we're human. At the end of the day, we both walk on the same surface of the earth. Correct? Okay. So I needed to make that clear because that's the other thing. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a plumber, you can be a janitor, but we're all people, right? So that goes back. Who are you? What's your labor of love? What's your workforce of love? I need to know because that's the thing. When you take off everything and you derobe yourself and you're home, that's who you are. Just like me, just like you, we're the same. So anywho, he would say, well, Fanny, I need to speak to Lucille because I'm looking for Article X2Y7. I'm like, oh, no, that's in Article 6, Section 8, Item B. Oh, really? Oh, it is right there. I knew my contracts. Believe it or not, when I sat at my desk, I read every single contract because sometimes people would come over and they would say appendix, the preface, and this article, the salary. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Well, they were talking about collective bargaining agreements. And in school, I was learning about different contracts and negotiations. So I said, this is the best opportunity. I'm apprenticing. I work here. I should learn this. So I learned every single contract, how it's written, the setup, the design, the content, what means what, everything. So if someone had a question, I knew exactly what page. That's on page 25. That's Article 4. I already knew. It didn't matter if it was a traveling nurse, if it was a chapter leader, if it was a functioning chapter, if it was speech pathologist, if it was psychology, if it was special education, if it was general education. I knew the rights. Welcome back. One of my favorite things to say. So, where were we? Their rights. I knew what their rights were. Why? Well, one, the funny thing is, like I mentioned, I knew so many people who were teachers. They would call, Fanny, I have an issue. I have this much space of bulletin board space, and I need I'm like, well, it's in your contract. You're entitled to. And I would already get into it. I would say, you know what? Let me let you speak to a representative. I can't give you this advice. And I would constantly find myself tongue-tied because in my position, I wasn't allowed to help them. But I had to reach out to a representative to help them. And sometimes I would have to lay it out. But I'd always make sure I would say, well, this is not as a representative, but just as a friend, I think you should look at this article. I had to learn to rephrase it. Anywho. Then I started working for special education around the same time, and I couldn't believe how much I loved just the whole job, helping, doing, being a part. And I know I was a force to be reckoned with and maybe a little bit maleficent, but I loved it. It was such a great opportunity. So for me, other opportunities did happen in the course of all this. I did paralegal work on the side. I still did sometimes restaurants. Sometimes I did fashion. I always kept something. I was always a notary. So I always kept other things going. And I treated my notary more philanthropy because sometimes people would say, Fanny, can you help me? I need a notary for this will and testament. And I would be so sad seeing the person in the hospital or seeing that there's an old man and they need a whole entire will done. And I didn't have the heart to charge them. It's my job as a notary to witness your signature is yours and you verified it. Why? Because if someone tries to take advantage of you, I could say, no, he wasn't there. That's not his signature. That's the whole point. So the only reason why a notary would charge is if they don't want to do the notary work. Honestly, it's in your in the language. So if you look over your language of notary rights, you can charge $2, $2.50. Pennsylvania is $5, depending if you have your malpractice insurance, all those other things. But the idea is that no one should be denied, right? Now, let me tell you, when it's a divorce decree, I usually charge $50. Because how many signatures? So if you do $2 a signature, I do the math. And if you add up how many times I have to sign, it's usually like 25, 30 different times. So it really should be more, but I say it's $50 for your divorce decree. Let's look it over. By the time they see how many times I have to sign, it's a lot, depending on the divorce. So 9 out of 10, if I have a good heart that day, I will only charge like $5 or $6 because I feel bad, again, depending on the situation. So notary, it's not, if when someone's like, oh, I want to be a notary, I can make money. No, that is not why you become a notary. You become a notary because something inside of you says, this is your constitutional civic duty to help your fellow Americans. That is why. So if you're like, I want to make an extra dollar, go do Uber Eats. Okay, so next on the agenda. So then I did that job. What happened was we ended up moving, and I said, well, I can't work here. This commute is too much. And I spoke to my boss, and I was able to see I could leave like an early retirement. And I was 3 years short of full-time benefits, but I would get my full pension. So we figured it out, and I exited. But let me tell you, I left when I was at my top. The way I was treated was with so much love. To this day, I compare everything to that experience. Oh, you want me to do X, Y, and Z? Oh, well. And I think about that experience because I grew up in that environment. And I was just so treated so kindly. So when I go places and I don't get that same treatment, well, my eyebrow does flare. So when we came out here, I figured, well, we sold our house, we bought a new place, blah, 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 blah. I don't need to work. But then I realized, okay, you know what? My husband has a great job, but the benefits are lacking. So he was like, get a job that has good benefits. Don't worry about the salary. Okay, that's what I did. But here's the thing. Where I started working, I had to use my math skills. So all the jobs I've ever had, yes, I did accounting and payroll and human resources. I have all these experiences. I was a human resources trainer, benefits and compensation, payroll. Yeah, I did it all. And legal research, notary, paralegal, right? Comedian. Well, you know what? I skipped over the comedian part. Let's take one step. Not yet. So I'm going to get back to the comedian part. So I'm working in this medical hospital. I'll say it like that. And I'm working in a for-profit office. And I'm doing their payroll. And I loved it. It was so cool. I was like, yeah, I'll do your payroll. And the thing I liked about it was I wasn't in charge. I had no business being in charge because all my other jobs, every job I've ever had, I was always the manager, the boss, the director, the leader, the liaison. But I never just was the person. So now I have this job. I'm not in charge. And I feel great. I can focus on my kids. I just do the payroll. No problem. While I was there, I got recruited to work for somewhere else. And it looked like an opportunity. So the opportunistic Fanny inside of me was like, girl, do it. So I said, okay, let me do it. So I exited that place and I got this other job. Now this job, I felt like I was in the highest level of technology. It was so amazing. The experience was amazing. And I got to utilize my technical skills on a level where I was a subject matter expert and I felt amazing. I had amazing coworkers. It was really a great opportunity. And when I was there, I was able to be more shticky. Like all my jokes would come out. And people would say, are you a comedian? Like, what do you think? You're so funny. All the years I was in my previous job, that was just who I was. But now it's really showcased because I'm able to not be so stern and not be so rigorous. I'm able to just relax. So I'm able to be kind of funny. Well, a couple of decades back, I used to hang out when I worked in the World Trade Center. Afterwards, I would go with my friends and we would go to different places. And one of them was the Olive Tree, not to be confused with the Olive Garden. The Olive Tree had a comedian theater right attached to its little bar and restaurant. And people like Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Adam Sandler, Colin Quinn would always be there. Now, this is not a tell-all, so I will not say who, what, when, why, and where. But one time I went, and a certain comedian was buying me drinks, and I was 18, buying me drinks and behaving a certain way, and he was like, just be my girlfriend, just be my girlfriend. I was like, no, I don't want to. And it was a different time. It was just a different time. But the one thing he said was, well, why don't you go on stage? You're so funny. I was like, go on stage? Oh my God, I can't do that. He was like, your jokes are good. Go ahead, go. So there wasn't a lot of people there that day. And I think the owner, he wasn't there. So I went on stage and I performed. I did 3 sets. And I got booed off each set. They were like, oh my God, your jokes are so lame. Oh my God, you can't relate to those jokes. And then the last one, good job. The third time was the charm. So I was like, oh my God, I'm a failed comedian. So I would continue to go and hang out with them. Now, I don't know if they remember me, and that's on them, because I remember my experiences. And I had a great time. It was so much fun. So I look at them differently. I really look at them for their people, their person, not their talent. So sometimes a movie will come out, and so-and-so is in there, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Why do I say that? They don't know me. Why am I proud of them? Because I remember when they were nothing, writing their jokes on a napkin. And who the hell was I? I was just some kid hanging out with them because I thought they were funny. I didn't even know they were celebrities. I had no idea. And I had other friends that I grew up with that was in this movie called Kids. I knew all of them. But, that doesn't give me money in my pocket. But when I see them being amazing now, especially one in particular, I always go, wow, girl, you did it. And you come from our neighborhood. I just feel that way. And I can't let it go. So it's just different. Like someone's like, why do you care so much? Why do you care? Who the hell cares about that actor, that celebrity? I'm like, oh my God, I remember when they were nothing, when they were babies. It's just for me. And you know what? Probably it was an insignificant moment in their life. And they might have been like, I don't know who that is. That's fine. And like I always say, your experiences are yours. So if someone doesn't recall, I had somebody once come up to me and say, hey, Fanny, oh my God, how are you? You look great. Oh, wow, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I remember we used to do blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay. And they walked away. And I didn't know who that was. But what did I do? Oh, yes, take care. All right, great. I'm not going to be fake. But I'm going to let that person have their moment, right? Why would I take that away from them? There's so many things that we just keep moving and we're focused. I'm going to give you an example. If any of you live in New York City, you're going to take a vacation to North Carolina. I'm going to tell you why. In New York City, it's go, look straight, hold your latte, run, jump over, huddle over the homeless person. Watch out for that pigeon. Look out for that rat. Don't spill a drip of your latte. That's always a joke I say. I used to say no matter what, one time I fell on the street holding my latte and guess what? I didn't drop a sip. Hello, it's a $7 latte. But here's the point. That's how you're focused in New York City. When you go to North Carolina, someone will say to you, how you doing? Don't be mistaken. That's not a quick New York City minute. Like I always say, I go from yo to y'all. Because in North Carolina, it's a little bit, take your time with it. So I'm like, hi, I'm fine. Oh, really? Well, let me tell you what happened to me. Oh, okay, what happened to you? Well... Oof, that's a good 5 minutes right there, just getting the introduction. And everybody's so friendly. North Carolina, no offense, New York, North Carolina, I spent so much time there. It's one of my favorite states. New York and North Carolina, I love them both so much. I have so many great memories in both. So if someone says anything about North Carolina, I go, where did you go? I get so excited. Okay, so we're so focused, right? But when someone acknowledges a moment of my life, I give them the love. Why would I ever take that away? I always give the love. And the thing is, I'm a loudmouth. I'll give you an example. My sister, I love her so much. And she is reserved. She thinks before she speaks. But I tell you, me and her have the same thought. If we're walking around and someone's being stank, I look at her, she look at me, we thinking the same thing. But I'm already, And she's like, so she's different, right? She says to me, Fanny, do you know my friends from when I grew up? They don't know who I am, but they know who you are. And I laugh at that. I'm like, because I'm a loudmouth, right? You're always going to remember that loud, annoying little creak in your chair. I'm not sitting in that chair. That chair makes loud noise. That's me. So, but back to the workforce. So, with that said, I was sitting there like, you know what? I am funny. I mean, sometimes when people say, wow, you're funny, I go, no, I make that mistake a lot. It's Fanny with an A, not a U. That's one of my other jokes. I always have these jokes, and sometimes my jokes are bomb, 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 and sometimes they're super funny. But the point is, it's what I like to do. I like to be a moderator, a speaker, a motivator, a coach. I like to look at the good, not the bad, the positive, not the negative, but I'm always realistic. Because I've learned something. When you have high expectations, you're easier to fall and fail. When you have low expectations and goals, you will feel more happier within yourself. So, I'm working at this job. COVID happens. Life happens. But it doesn't stop me. I'm still doing me. And I'll tell you something that's amazing. I've been blogging since 2015. Literally, that's when I started. And I've always journalized. I've always told people these stories, and they go, wow, girl, you could write a book. I would like to watch that movie. Girl, you should have your own TV show. You're so funny. And I would be like, stop. No, don't stop. Continue. But I took it like, wait a minute. People like to listen to me? Wow, okay. So I did my blog. I wrote my blog out, and I was like, okay. When this happened, I had the opportunity to speak out. And I took it. I took the opportunity. Why would you be shy? Do it. Live your life. And now I'm doing this podcast. And I feel amazing. What is it though? It's a job. It's another job. Am I a podcaster? Yeah. I'm a blogger, a podcaster, paralegal, an analytic fun fan, a skills analysis master. I like to do so many things. I'm a notary, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I'm a butcher, I'm a baker, and I'm a candlestick maker. I love to do these type of jobs. I just do. And I think back, okay, my father did this, my grandfather did this, my mother did this. Like, everybody in my family always had so many things going on. So I really respect that. Now, where's the full circle? Here we go. Here's full circle. You've been waiting for the full circle. Let's bring it out. The full circle is whatever your workforce of love is, keep it separate from your job. Okay? So when you're a little Tommy and little Susie and little Mary and little Kate and little, I don't know, Larry, Harry, I don't know, whoever. When you're a little one. And someone's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always tell my kids, get into sports. And then when you retire, become a sports medicine doctor. And then open up a practice, the Chico Boys Sports Medicine Center. And I'll be your secretary. I always tell my kids that. You could be Dr. Chico, and you could be Dr. Chico, and you could be Dr. Chico, and you could work in the hospital. And they go, Mom, I don't want to do that. That's your dream. Yeah, that's my dream. That my sons will be sports medicine doctors, that famous celebrities in NFL and NBA will come inside, get their knees checked, their back checked, their hip checked. Yeah, and I'll be the little secretary booking appointments. I'll be like 68. They're going to have children by then. You're going to call me Granny Fanny. I'm going to have a little glass pearl beaded necklace to hold my glasses on. I'll keep it right at the tip of my nose, and I'll say, hello, do you have an appointment? Yeah, that's what I want to do. That is my end-all be-all dream. But that's like a fantasy dream I have for my children. They're like, no, Mom, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a famous this one. I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be this. And then my little one, I'm going to be a football player, but I don't want to be famous. Okay, those are their dreams. So we can't let people dictate what we want to do. But my grandmother always said, I don't care what you want to do, Fanny. You're studying law. Okay. I listened to her. Why? Maybe she saw something in me as my elder, as my wise woman in my life, as my grandmother. She said, you know what, Fanny? You're very analytical. You're very legal. You should do law. My whole family is teachers. My cousin's a teacher. My sister works in a college. My other cousin's a teacher. My other cousin's a professor. My other cousin's a teacher. My aunt's a teacher. Everybody in my family is a teacher. She was like, you should be a lawyer. I was like, really? Not a teacher. She was like, But the thing is, I didn't know if I wanted to be. But I studied it, right? But like I said, you keep one foot in your reality and you keep one foot in your job. That's it. Oh, but Fanny, I'm a cashier. I work in a bank. Blah, 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 blah. What's your dream? I love to crochet. Well, then crochet. Why stop your dream? I'm going to tell you something. My husband, during the whole time, started baking the most amazing bread. I couldn't believe it. I was like, dang, all this time, I made this bread now. Baking, cooking. Then he started doing woodwork. I said, well, if you're going to do that woodwork, you better build me a 10-foot table. Okay, he built me this gorgeous dining room table by hand. You want to know why Home Depot didn't have any flour and didn't have any wood? He was in here. He was in here doing things. He loves it. Then he bought one of those presses. So then he started making masks and beautiful shirts and with embroidery, with all these different things. If you look at my husband, you would not know. He would not even show off and tell you. He is such an artist, with just an amazing person. But what does he love to do? He loves to work with cars and vehicles. His job, sometimes I tell people his job and they're like, really? But he loves it. My husband's been working in this industry for over 20 years. And then we move out here, he moves to the same industry. But what's his passion? So he has this other passion he does, his creative side. Excellent. Why? Oh, I work every day, 9 to 5. Your life doesn't stop. Yeah, that's your job. That's what continues to fund your dream. You really got to tap into this. And I'm explaining this because, well, Fanny, I don't want a podcast. I don't want to do this. Then don't do it. If your job is enough for you, then that's your dream. Oh, but it's not my dream. I want to travel. Let me tell you something. You know when your job's closed. You know when all the holidays are. Book your travel ahead. Save money. Work with a travel agent. Travel agent, I know everyone's like, oh, travel agent, who does that? They have the best deals because they book it ahead of time. You know, you got to kind of think about what it is you like and figure out what's the best possible way. I call it couponing, okay? I have a cousin, she's an amazing couponer, but let me explain something. Couponing is not just cutting out coupons. It's looking for the best deal, the best opportunity, right? Well, if I go to Michael's, it's this, but if I go to Walgreens, it's that. You figure out what your opportunity is. At the end of the day, maybe you just go to ShopRite. You figure it out. That's the whole point, right? Okay, so the full circle is live your dream. Find out, what is my dream? I don't know. And then the other thing is, how do I know my dreams are going to happen? I'm going to tell you how. When I took my notary license, I said, when I pass that test, I'm going to go to Tiffany's and buy myself a Tiffany pen. Well, I passed my test. I walked into Tiffany's and I was like, hello, sir. I have a friend that works in Tiffany's on Wall Street. Love him, love him, love him. I walk into that store. One time they were like, you know what? You were chosen. You're our favorite customer. You're going to come and have chocolate and champagne. I invited 2 friends. We had chocolate and champagne. And it's not that I spend millions of dollars. It's that type of customer service. So anywho, I was like, I want a Tiffany pen. He was like, you want a Tiffany pen? Which one do you want? That one. Boom. Why? Because I have to sign my name. I want to use a Tiffany pen. That is my arrogance, but that's my reward for making my goal. Oh, when I make my next goal, I'm going to buy a little Kate Spade bag, but it's going to be bubblegum pink. And guess what? I made my goal and I bought it. It took time and I got it. When I make my next goal, I'm going to have a cookie. Whatever your reward is, but don't do it and don't give yourself false rewards. Hit the goal, get your prize. It really helps you satisfy the need for appraisal, for recognition, because I'm going to tell you something. Do not go anywhere with the hopes and dreams and aspirations that someone's going to tell you how amazing you are. Know your worth before you walk into the door. So you're walking in the door, wow, you're great. Know this, but don't say it. Say thank you. Thank you so much. Why? Because modesty will pay you 10 times the fold. It's true. But if you're naive and you don't realize, then you're going to get paid half the price for twice the work. So you need to know your worth and your value, even to yourself. Okay, so I'm going to run 10 miles today. I'm going to do 20 sit-ups. I'm going to do an hour of cardio. And my reward is I'm going to get a pedicure. Maybe that's your reward. Listen, you know that's not what I'm doing. That's not my goal next time. But if that's your reward, do it. And then I'm just going to get the pedicure anyway. No, that defeats the purpose. Because what happens is then you get it and then you're used to that energy. You didn't earn it. Think about it. Okay, friends, that is my workforce of love. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me on this Fannytastic Life. Take care. I am so excited to share with you that I am now brand ambassador for her team. This group empowers women everywhere, and their apparel is phenomenal. Babes empowering babes, that's one of their slogans on their clothing apparel. It's so awesome, so amazingly fantastic. So go check it out. If you go to officialherteam.com and you use my code FHBMGC, you get 30% off. So why not shop now? It's pretty awesome. Feel free to share the code, and you can always check them out on Instagram at her team. Take care.